Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dr. Amina Sayyid, all the distinguished participants in the Adab Festival of Pakistan. I'm delighted to have the opportunity of renewing my friendship with you. I regard, as I have said so many times, your part of the world as my susral. But intellectually, I just want to say that the building bridges and overcoming obstacles in terms of relations between the clash of civilization may sound like a contradiction, and it did when Samuel Huntington suggested that this clash was distinguishing a dangerous other. He referred to two sides to a polarized world, and ironically this came at the end of the Cold War, where the polarity of hatred in theory had ended. He spoke about East and West, and he suggested that this would no longer signify the Soviet Union, but a particular view of Islam, an Islam opposed by a West less representative of a triumphant Christendom than a secular modernity. Because of the controversy generated by this thesis, not only in the rarefied realms of academia, but also in the tangible world in which we live, in which even academics must live, there's been much talk of the necessity of a dialogue between civilizations aimed at addressing this point. But I believe that this dialogue is one that has to be addressed in the context of one world civilization and 10,000 cultures, as my friends in the short-lived Parliament of Cultures suggested. And I would like to suggest that the world civilization actually refers to culture, to a society's cultural achievements in acquiring knowledge and developing technology or science. In that context, a meeting of ideas, and I thank Michel Foucault for inspiring me with the term gouvernementalité, the attitude, the mentality of gouvernement, governance, if you will, when he referred to the world of intelligent curiosity, as indeed in a recent publication, Professor Mosenson has spoken of the state in science, on empire, power, infrastructures, and finance. There are families, the communities, and the social institutions. Who were the Ottomans? Who were the Persians? Who were the Mughals in history? These transcending concepts of Levant, Mesopotamia, this heartland of the world as it was described by Halford Mackinder in 1908, the father, if you will, of geoscience. I wanted to suggest to you that during our deliberations, we should add an additional protagonist to the equation, the state and its distinct approach to planning, administration, science, and technology included. The techniques of control that are part of the government, of the art of government, expand and include, as they did for Foucault, knowledge, science, and technology. In the context of the communication of ideas, and I have often spoken of the pilgrimage routes with great respect, with the spice routes and the silk routes, why can we not add a route of ideas? The ideas that extend westward from the Levant, where we live, Lever de Soleil, where the sun rises, from Qasr Hisham in Jericho to Birkat al-Aghaliba in Qayrawan, today's Tunisia, to Birkat al-Aghaliba or Birkat al-Usud, the Court of Lions in Granada. Nobody talks about the contribution of the architect. Nobody talks about the caravan routes that have affected and influenced this extraordinary exchange of ideas, largely generated by the patron through intisab, patron-protege relationships. For 600 years, the trade from Sijil Mas on the Atlantic coast of Morocco today to Malabar and beyond, to Malacca, Al-Multaqa, the place where traders traveling east and west would meet. Their trust, and the element of trust is so important, based on an IOU. I will see you on the next trade winds. Today, to bring about a trade agreement between different parts of the world, it's almost a declaration of war before the signing actually takes place. And this is what I find so worrisome. I am a rhizomic person, I believe that culture spreads like roots from one side to the other. I'm not a vertical person. I'm very proud of my family, Shajara, but that doesn't mean that I believe in going further up and up and up into the clouds. Patrons who support their protégés with goodwill believe effectively that sources of inspiration can be created, such as the University of Qarawiyyin in Morocco, funded by Fatima al-Fihriya. These were the initiatives of Waqf, the initiatives of foundations. We look for foundations today, independent of the state, that would give inspiration to a wide range of communal services. The better we build the basis of our society, the more likely it is that we are going to invest in human democracy. The face of democracy today is one of figures, one of digits, and I hope that we can talk in the future on the basis of continuity. When we speak of the traditions inherited by the Ottomans or the Persians or the Mughals, of thoughts inherited from previous periods, from the classical period, which we, the Muslims and Arabs, translated and provided to the world. I think the time has come to bear in mind the medical traditions that viewed Galen's humoral medicine as the most learned and scientific of the time, to the other medical theories and practices that existed in the old Muslim world, folk medicine and religious medicine. I think the time has come to remember and learn from Sultan Mehmed IV and his personal physician and friend Ibn Saloom, the latter renowned for authoring a medical encyclopedia by the name Ghayat al-Itqan fi Tadbir Badan al-Insan, the objectives of perfection in caring for the human body. The Zainab Kamil Hospital, which was founded in 1876 on the Asian banks of the Bosphorus, continued the trend begun at Bezmi Alem Hospital, and so forth. So I thank the author of this book on the state and science, and I turn to communities of faith and say that in Muslim societies, for that matter in Christian societies, in Jewish societies, in Buddhist, Hindu societies, I served as moderator for 6 years of the international organization known as the World Conference for Religions and Peace. It seems to me that our missionary orientation has fallen foul of the realities and the products of what has been turned into a nightmare, a psychological component of perceptional revisionism that can only come about once the pathways to perception formation are addressed. All too often, themselves caught up in acrimonious cycles of mutual blame and finger-pointing. You are the other, therefore you are wrong, and I am right. This ideological state of affairs identified, intercepted, and addressed, comes up with some extraordinary conclusions. Let me just say that for education to stand a realistic chance of achieving, and this May we have an international summit called for by the Pope in the Holy See on education, let me just say that this educational exercise is a two-way exercise. It must be married off to the far more abstract concept of goodwill. Merely knowing about the other is by no means guaranteed to create better feelings and to dismantle generationally ingrained negative attitudes. I argue that the best chance for this requisite goodwill is to be generated via the experiential component. What I'm saying basically is that to know is to love, that mutual awareness and knowledge, the often heralded fruits of education, help to humanize the other, creating a better understanding of his or her fears and concerns. But of course, while this may be true as far as it goes, we must bear in mind that some of the bloodiest and most brutal conflicts have occurred between people who know each other only too well and have little mutual empathy as a result, including, alarmingly, co-religionists. Let us look at some examples. Confrontation among co-religionists and co-nationalists. In the Caucasus, for instance, is Christian Russia-backed Muslim Abkhazia against Christian Georgia, while Muslim Iran played off Christian Armenia against Muslim Azerbaijan. Ossetians against Georgians, both Christians, Lezgins against Azeris, both Muslims, Circassians against Karachai, both Muslim. In Lebanon, savage battles raged between Muslims, Christians, and Druze, all of whom knew each other sufficiently well already, but the most savage of all battles often took place within each sect. In the Balkans, and we have the tragic adjective Balkanization, the Balkanization of our Near East region is all too evident of this pitting off of one ethnic or sectarian or tribal minority against the other. In the Balkans, we see Moldovans versus Russians, Hungarians versus Romanians, Macedonians versus Greeks, Serbs versus Croats. So is it surprising that in the context of our region that outside forces can play us off within the Ummah, whether Sunni or Shia? I would like to suggest to you, without becoming unreasonably emotional about these issues, that maybe what we should seek in festivals of Adab is a method of creating a database and analyzing it. The anticipated desires of international conferences in terms of outcomes should include something along the formula of an exchange of scholars, students, and artists, as in the Socrates and the Erasmus programs. Alternatively, albeit slightly overlapping, a vision for religious education, the identification and highlighting of shared values, the experiential component, i.e. the encounter with the other and all practical and personal experience entailed therein. I would like to thank you for your patience, but my remarks were intended to invite you to respond to feelings of exclusion, and those feelings, I think, are not peculiar to anyone in South Asia or West Asia. I think that this heart of the world in which we live has to wake up to the longest distance in the world, which is not from here to here, but also from here back to here. From mind and heart and consciousness, we can begin to work together for a safer world for humankind. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Wassalamu alaikum.